Hello everyone, today we're going to be watching a quick video about candidates whose policies would objectively make healthcare more expensive, as demonstrated by every single study that's ever been done, and history, but of course they don't pay attention to that. Those people are going to talk about how they want to lower healthcare costs by doing policies that have objectively in the past made it more expensive. But that's clown world that we live in, and the gullible sheep will just lap it all up. Let's watch the insanity, shall we?
Democratic presidential hopeful Kamala Harris is revealing a new plan for government-backed health care this morning ahead of this week's Democratic debates. Fellow 2020 candidate Bernie Sanders made an international trip yesterday to make a point about health care costs.
Why are you campaigning in Canada when the election's in the U.S.? That makes absolutely no sense. Oh, and I might add, forgot this at the beginning of the video, look at that ratio. Holy fuck, we'll look at the comments and how they eviscerate Kamala Harris for being a stuck-up bitch. Oh, am I sexist for saying that? No, Democrats, I've spoken with plenty of Democrats who hate Kamala Harris. Oh, are they racist too? Oh, we'll see. She has the right intersectionality, which is why I think she will be the candidate against Trump. So mark that on your calendar. We'll see where we are a year from now. But we're getting off track here.
Ed O'Keefe is keeping track of the candidates' plans. Ed, what's behind this focus on health care?
Well, Michelle, good morning. Voters tell us health care remains a top-of-mind concern, specifically health care costs.
So don't you think you would do policies that would lower costs, like getting government regulations out of healthcare and not restricting it so much so that people have an open market to choose whatever plan they want, and companies would compete with each other to give the best policies to people? I gave this example in a previous video. I don't know which one it was, so I can't link it, but cost of everyday goods, like everything you can buy at Walmart, for example, light bulbs, chairs, coat hangers, DVDs, whatever. Those prices have gone down over time. Why? Because government doesn't restrict them as much as healthcare, for example. The government controls every single facet of society. Think of one thing that doesn't have a government regulation. The government, speakers, keyboards, shoes, cardboard boxes, they have a hand in everything. That's beside the point. They don't care about coat hangers as much as healthcare. But yet, everyday items, household items, toiletries have gone down. Why? Because companies are allowed to compete in the open markets. Not a complete open market, because we don't have a complete capitalism, but it's pretty darn good and a lot better than the healthcare sector of the economy. They are allowed to compete with one another to provide the best and cheapest product to you. They are competing with themselves to drive down costs for the consumer and drive up quality, so customers will buy their product. That's capitalism at its best. So why have we seen in the exact same time that household and toiletries have gone down relative to people's salaries, why have we seen healthcare costs skyrocket during the same time period? Well, because government doesn't allow them to do that. It constantly burdens hospitals and insurance companies and nurses with all amount of this red tape, just a overwhelmingly amount of red tape that is unnecessary. All these restrictions on how you can sell, what you can sell, how you produce it, what you use to produce medicine, blah, 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 every single tiny little thing that drives down efficiency, that drives up costs, that drives up manpower, which in turn, they need to pay more salaries in order to get shit done, versus if all these regulations weren't done. If you spend more on salaries to make something, you have to up the cost to make up for that. This is basic economists. I can't talk today. Basic economics. I is smart. And somehow these candidates just don't fucking understand it.
CBS News Battleground Tracker survey of early primary states finds that 3 in 4 Democrats say they must hear a candidate's proposals for lowering health care costs before voting for them.
We're American citizens. How can that be that in the United States of America that I am paying so much for insulin?
Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders on Sunday.
Well, I'll tell you, Mrs. Crying Woman, I hate when they get people up on stage during campaigns and just have them whine like complete bitches. And it's like, oh, we're moved by women's tears. Let's change policy that would objectively make everything worse. Oh, but it'll make us feel better about this crying woman. I mean, just, oh my God, the emotional manipulation. Just come on, we're so sick of that shit. Anyway, I will tell you, Mrs.
America, that I am paying so much for insulin.
Where's your name?
We're American citizens.
Kathy Seago, if that's how you say your name. Look at those sunglasses. Holy shit, you're lame. I'll tell you, whiny bitch. Because America constricts the insulin companies so much that it drives up costs. You know why it's cheaper in Canada versus here? You know why you can't just buy something from Canada, insulin for example, without a prescription, have it shipped? Because the government forbids Canada from selling insulin in the US. You cannot buy insulin in Canada and have it shipped here. You cannot buy insulin over the counter without a prescription. If the government didn't have all these rules saying you have to have a prescription for insulin, you have to buy it in the US, you can't buy it from Canada or anywhere else where it's cheaper, then you could buy insulin at a much cheaper price, like Canadians do. But your government is preventing you from doing that. And you're supporting Sanders, who supports those rules. That is how dumb you are. You're crying about a problem, and then going to vote for someone who openly says, yep, I'm going to continue this problem. And yet I know you're going to blame Republicans for this. To be fair, Democrats and Republicans both support this rule. This is a third-party position where I support the deregulation of all drugs. There should be no such thing as prescription. If you want to buy a drug, you don't need a prescription, you just fucking buy it. People don't have access to doctors. It's hard. A lot of people don't have health care. It's hard to make a trip to the doctor when you're working a lot and get a prescription. Sometimes it takes 2 or 3 visits. You can't just go to a doctor and say, hey, I need this. Boom. They need to do all these tests and they need to diagnose you. It might just be easier if you can take responsibility for yourself and say, yeah, I know I have diabetes. I don't need to go through all these tests and all these doctor's appointments and all this money and all this time to get that diagnosis. I already know. I already have it, whatever. I should just be able just to buy insulin at CVS without a prescription. They should just have it on the aisle. They should have it everywhere. Any place you can buy over-the-counter, like Tylenol, for example. They should have every single drug you can ever hope for. That is a truly open market, capitalism, libertarian idea that would lower costs and increase access. But both political parties don't want to do that.
How can that be that in the United States of America that I am...
Wait.
Senator Bernie Sanders on Sunday crossed the border into Canada with people seeking cheaper diabetes medication.
Depending on where you live, it'll cost $350, $400. Here in Canada, it will cost $35 or $40.
Then allow Americans to buy insulin from Canada for $35, $40. Oh, but you won't. You won't get rid of that government rule. And why is that? Why do candidates not allow American citizens to buy a large amount of drugs from overseas? You can buy some overseas drugs, don't get me wrong, but a lot of them, including insulin, you cannot. Well, why? Because they're in bed with the pharmaceutical companies in the U.S. And the U.S. pharmaceutical companies know they cannot compete internationally, so they're like, hey, politicians, we're going to donate to your campaign. In exchange, can you make this rule saying that Americans have to buy from us? And we can jack up the price as much as we want, and they have no choice but to buy it. And Canada's like, yep, I'll do that. I'll keep that rule. That's how they're in bed with each other. Just screw us over.
Sanders is the lead advocate for Medicare for All, a new...
That wouldn't help. Oh my God, that wouldn't help. That would just make things worse. How are you going to pay for it, Sanders? You're going to tax all the millionaires and billionaires, all those evil, rich millionaires and billionaires? Oh, wait a second. You're one of those millionaires. You own 3 houses. Why aren't you beating yourself on the back with a chain? Because you're an evil millionaire that you constantly rail against. I never hear that. Even if you taxed millionaires and billionaires at you took every single dollar they made, you still couldn't pay for Medicaid for all. That is how expensive your program is. I already did a video. Actually, let's see which one it is. Blah 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 blah. Yeah, this one. Medicare for all is a horrible idea. If you want to go more to this topic of why it is just unrealistic to ever pay for a program that he is proposing, watch that one, 134.
Government-backed healthcare system. It would virtually eliminate the private healthcare industry.
Healthcare accounts for almost 20% of our GDP. It's vitally important to the American people. It's unaffordable right now.
Several other presidential...
Then why are you getting rid of the most effective way to lower costs and increase access? If, as the reporter said, if Sanders' plan is to eliminate the private markets, well then the government is going to have a monopoly over the healthcare industry it has no one to compete with at all, so it can raise costs as much as it wants. And again, Americans have no choice but to buy from the one provider of healthcare in the entire nation, that is the government. That is a horrible idea. Look up every single other nation that's done that. All the other socialist and communist countries that have eliminated private healthcare and done just solely government healthcare, it sucks. The quality sucks. The costs are skyrocketing. It takes forever just to get an appointment. It's horrible. But these fucking idiots they've never cracked open a history book in their life, or maybe they do and they just don't care. It's completely possible. Like, you would have had to learn about this in school. I learned about this in history class in school. Despite saying that public education brainwashes people to believe radical democratic ideas, I didn't get that education, even though I was in a public school in a heavy Democrat district. Somehow I avoided that, but that's a topic for another time. I was taught about, let's look at Cuba, let's look at Venezuela, let's look at Russia, the Soviet Union, all those other Eastern European countries that under communist rule that had just government health care, and it sucked. It sucked so bad. I'm sure these people know about it, they just don't care. Because they'll get the coverage. They're celebrities. They're the 1%. They don't have to wait like everyone else to get health care. They just boom, they get it. Without even waiting.
Contenders support Sanders' idea, or some version of it.
Healthcare is a fundamental right.
No, it's not. You do not have the right to other people's labor. That is tyranny. That is fascism. That is big government overreach at its best. No, absolutely wrong.
And we will deliver that right with Medicare for all.
If California Senator Kamala Harris has her way, Medicare for all would be implemented over 10 years instead of 4 years, as Sanders wants. It would give private insurers a role in the system by allowing them to provide a Medicare plan. And she'd pay for the plan by raising taxes on people making more than $100,000 a year.
What a surprise. Oh, I didn't see that one coming. Oh my God, had no idea. So not only is she going to tax billionaires and millionaires, she's going to tax people just making $100,000. The top earners in this country already pay more than half the taxes. And you're going to raise taxes on them even more, further burdening them with taxes. And you're like, oh, you're just sticking up for the super rich. Why are you doing that, Robert? No, I'm not talking about the super rich. I'm talking about $100,000. That's pretty good. Don't get me wrong. That's excellent. I wish I made that much. But that's not super rich. In Los Angeles or D.C., that's not a lot. Because the standard of living and everything, utilities and everything is so fucking expensive. $100,000 does not get you very far in Los Angeles or D.C. or inner city New York. If you made $100,000 in rural Alabama, yeah, you would be living like a king. It all depends on where you live. But this is a blanket everything.
Sanders' plan would tax virtually everyone.
Oh, wow. I can't believe CBS is this. Holy shit, I don't know if I'm going to downvote this. This is actually very accurate and not fake news, which is very surprising coming from CBS. Virtually everyone. For all those Bernie bros saying, "Oh, he's only going to raise taxes on the single rich, on the very rich, the tippy top, the 1%." No, he's not. There's not enough money there. He's going to have to tax virtually everyone. People whose taxes are already burdensome as fuck.
He's been honest. He's going to cost, it's going to raise tax on the middle class. Well, you got to find $30 to $40 trillion somewhere, and how are you going to do it?
Former Vice President Joe Biden's plan preserves and expands Obamacare. It would cost $750 billion over the next decade and would provide a public option if needed. Biden's plan would allow Americans to import cheaper drugs from overseas and be paid for in part by ending the Trump tax cuts.
Okay, well, I don't believe in ending the Trump tax cuts because taxes should be cut across the board. But to give credit where credit is due, at least Biden is saying that, no, you can buy them from overseas for cheaper. Did you hear Harris or Sanders say that? No. Because Biden's more moderate. At least that's one good thing. That's very few things that Biden's doing correctly, but I'll give him that. At least he's correct in that. I mean, if I had to choose between voting between the three of them and I didn't have a choice of not voting or killing myself, I would vote for Biden. He is the least worst out of those three. Although he really does suck. They all really, really suck. But at least he sucks less than the other two.